Well, you thought they were dead, but they're very much alive. OpenAI just released GPT 5.2 and has pulled ahead of Gemini in almost all benchmarks. The craziest part is they did it in weeks, when many of us, myself included, thought it would take months to catch up to Gemini 3 Pro. Today we won't just look at pretty graphs. Today you'll see what actually changes in your daily work, your Excel sheets, PowerPoints, code, images, and even your token costs. The big question is GPT 5.2 a game changer for you or just another number in the OpenAI versus Google battle? Stay until the end, because I'll give you a simple guide on when to use GPT 5.2, when to use Gemini or Claude, and when something cheaper and faster makes more sense. Let's dive in. What is GPT 5.2, and why is everyone talking about it? Imagine you've been hearing for a year that Gemini is the new king. OpenAI has fallen behind, and ChatGPT isn't what it used to be. Then Gemini 3 Pro launches, reinvents benchmarks, doubles GPT-5.1 quote test scores in tests like RCAI 2, and many people switch directly to Gemini. Meanwhile, at OpenAI, code red leaks, nerves, doubts, drama, and suddenly GPT 5.2 appears. Officially, they present it as the most advanced frontier model for professional work and long-duration agents. In other words, it's designed for real work and to let agents operate independently for hours or days. But let's look at the numbers, which is where things get interesting. In RCAI 2, one of the most complex abstract reasoning benchmarks, GPT 5.1 scored around 17%. Then Gemini 3 Pro came out and reached about 31%. Anthropic with Opus 4.5 climbed to 37%, and GPT 5.2 arrives now with a score of 52.9%. It's incredible. That's a 20-point jump above Gemini. In GDP-Val, which measures real work tasks, presentations, Excel documents, office stuff, GPT 5.2 thinking wins or ties human professionals in about 70% of cases. In SWE Bench Pro, which involves real software engineering tasks in large repositories, GPT 5.2 sets a new state of the art and outperforms GPT 5.1 and all other models. And all this arrives in a matter of weeks, not years. We're at a strange point. The last month has seen more AI advancement than the previous 2 years, and it's dizzying. Now, all these numbers are great, but you don't live in a benchmark. Your real question is, okay, what do I gain from this? Where will I notice it? Let's bring this down to earth. What changes in your day-to-day life? Think about your daily work. If you deal with information, Excel files, presentations, reports, emails, financial models, project plans. Until now, models like GPT 5.1 were helpful, but often gave outputs that needed reworking. Unformatted spreadsheets, questionable formulas, presentations with generic titles and half-empty slides. With GPT 5.2, the beauty is that it's not just smarter, its outputs are much more immediately usable. A typical example they showcase themselves. You ask a workforce planning model for headcount, hiring plans, turnover, budget impact broken down by departments. With GPT 5.1, you'd get something like a decent enough table, minimal formatting, understandable columns, but you'd still need to rebuild it by adding formulas and verifying it hasn't made up strange data. But with GPT 5.2, the result looks more like this. A structured table with departments, columns for base salary, benefits, total cost, budget impact, formulas that follow coherent logic, and a format you wouldn't be embarrassed to show in a meeting. It's not magic, it doesn't create the perfect Excel for your company, but the gap between what AI gives you and something you'd actually use with your boss has narrowed considerably. The same applies to presentations. Before, if you asked for a 10-slide presentation about a project, you'd get a generic list of bullets. Slide 1, introduction, slide 2, context, very generic. Now GPT 5.2 organizes content into purposeful sections. It focuses on the problem, solution, roadmap, risks, and metrics. It details what goes on each slide and sometimes even adds speaker notes and suggested graphics. You don't have the final presentation yet, but you have something that looks like it was made by an eager junior consultant trying to impress. And I'm not just saying this for marketing purposes. The GDP-Val benchmarks prove exactly that. Experts prefer what GPT 5.2 produces over what previous models and competitors deliver on real-world tasks. Here's an important point. It's not just about vertical intelligence gains, but making the model more horizontally useful, with more outputs that are nearly ready to use. But of course, not everyone lives in Excel and PowerPoint. If code is your thing, here comes the big stuff. On paper, GPT 5.2 is currently the best general-purpose code model. In tests like SWE Bench Pro, where the model has to read a real repository, understand a bug or feature, and propose a patch that passes tests. GPT 5.2. Thinking is ahead of the game. What does that mean if you're a programmer? It's more likely to understand your project structure, helps you refactor large components without breaking things, finds subtle bugs that other models missed, and can implement end-to-end changes with minimal input from you. A very visual example from the demos, a wave simulator on a web page. You request, I want a page that simulates realistic waves with controls for wind speed, wave height, lighting. And ChatGPT 5.2 generates HTML, CSS, and JavaScript with an impressive wave animation. It includes controls for wind and height with a level of water detail that was rare to see from a single prompt just months ago. Now, when you step outside the benchmark world and into make me a pretty sales landing page, things change dramatically. In real tests, asking both GPT 5.2 and Gemini to create a landing page for an AI course like ours, with description, title, clear hero section, benefits, sections, etc. Both generate functional code, but Gemini's landing often looks more polished, with better visual hierarchy, less cluttered text, and better use of space. GPT 5.2 understands logic brilliantly. Its copy is usually better, but the visual result can be, let's say, a bit dated. Quick takeaway, if your priority is logic, serious refactoring, and back-end work, GPT 5.2 is very strong. If you want attractive front ends in one go, Gemini still has much to offer. And speaking of visual elements, let's talk about vision capabilities. Not about seeing the world better to win an art contest, but rather two different approaches. Vision as in looking at real-world things, or vision as in creating spectacular images. For the first type, GPT 5.2 has made a very serious leap forward. Examples of what it now does better: understanding a motherboard. GPT 5.1 already identified some parts like RAM and ports, but GPT 5.2 recognizes more components, places zones better, and understands the layout. It reads complex interfaces like dashboards with multiple graphs, app screens, control panels, detects buttons, interprets menus, understands what's happening, where to click, and what might go wrong. This is valuable if you work with analytics, product design, technical support with screenshots, or technical documentation with schematics and diagrams. But when we move to generating images from scratch, things change. A typical test: create a futuristic Tokyo night bazaar with rain and neon reflections on the ground, crowds of humans and robots walking between stools, an android selling glowing holographic flowers, signs with readable text, ultra-detailed cyberpunk atmosphere. Gemini and Nano Banana deliver an incredible scene. Text on the signs makes sense, with careful composition and many coherent details. While GPT 5.2 follows the prompt well with the robot and futuristic environment, it takes much longer to generate. And the result, though decent, may be a step below in aesthetics and text detail. Same issues appear in photo editing. In fact, one reason Gemini has become so popular is because its Nano Banana is genuinely superior compared to competitors, and GPT 5.2 still struggles with these tasks today, or simply fails to deliver what you're looking for. So, quick summary. If you want the model to understand images, graphs, screens, and visual PDFs, GPT 5.2 is very strong. But if you want art, YouTube thumbnails, ultra-polished posters, Gemini and Nano remain the benchmark. And now we move to the less sexy but more important topic like money, speed, and reliability. And we start with the uncomfortable truth. How much will it cost me to play with this? Well, the GPT 5.2 thinking API is approximately 40% more expensive than GPT 5.1, and the Pro version skyrockets. It's designed for very specific cases where paying much more for a slight quality boost and fewer errors makes sense. What does this mean in practice? If you have an app spending about $1,000 monthly with 5.1 and switch to 5.2, you could easily hit $1,400 or more. If you go pro, the bill could jump to several thousand more. Then there's latency. GPT 5.2 is clearly slower than 5.1 and Gemini in many responses. More thinking time, more reasoning tokens, higher compute cost. It's normal. It's a larger model with more parameters and greater depth. Is that bad? Well, it depends. For one-off chats, complex code, or analyzing long documents, waiting a few extra seconds is fine. But for customer service chatbots, where every second counts, it can be problematic. The good news is about hallucinations. OpenAI has been reducing hallucinations with each version. From 2023 models to GPT-5, there was already a massive reduction. From GPT 5.1 to 5.2, they've further decreased the percentage of erroneous responses. In internal tests with real ChatGPT queries, the results are impressive. They drop about 30% relative to 5.1 when search and reasoning features are activated. It doesn't mean you can stop reviewing important things, but it does mean this. Each time you delegate something serious to the model, there's less chance of getting a convincing lie, and that for professional work is key. So with everything we know, the question isn't if it's the best, but what it's best at for you. Let's build a simple map of when to use GPT 5.2, when to use Gemini, and when to use something else. Here comes the big payoff of this video, a straightforward map for your mind. Think about 3 axes: task type, what you value most, quality, speed, or price, and how much you need. Spectacular images. Let's go case by case. Case 1. Strategic writing, scripts, emails like video scripts, newsletters, sales emails, launch sequences, frameworks, explanations, storytelling. Here, GPT 5.2 really shines. The general feeling when using it is more structured responses, natural tone, less fluff compared to 5.1 comma, and hooks, ideas and formulas that sound less dramatic than Gemini's, which has a tendency toward hype. If your daily work involves writing, thinking, structuring, and communicating, GPT 5.2 has everything going for it to be your main model. Case 2 would be Excel, PowerPoint, office work, financial models, team planning, product roadmaps, aesthetically pleasing documentation, reporting template. If you want something that resembles what a junior analyst would produce and you just need to review and adjust, GPT 5.2. Thinking is mind-blowing. It not only better understands what you ask, but respects formatting more, makes fewer logical errors, and produces files closer to professional standards like a serious company would. If you work with back-end code, complex logic, and extensive agents like automating complex processes, orchestrating various tools, debugging tricky issues, or building agents that call APIs, databases, etc., then GPT 5.2 is currently among the best options available. Better function calling, better ability to follow long chains of steps, better understanding of large repositories. It's worth paying more per token if the value of what you're automating is high. Case 4. Beautiful front-end landing pages, unique interfaces. When visual appearance matters, eye-catching landings, clean small apps, or quick modern-looking prototypes, Gemini 3 Pro still excels. ChatGPT 5.2 gets the job done, but often includes too much text, or doesn't maintain visual hierarchy as well. The same applies to creative images, thumbnails, and artwork. Nano Banana is ahead in this area. For simple, high-volume tasks, you might not need GPT 5.2, but rather a faster, cheaper model like 5.1 or equivalent. In conclusion, OpenAI isn't dead and LLMs haven't reached their peak yet. Let's finally answer the big question. Is GPT 5.2 a game changer for you or just noise in the model war? And the honest answer is yes, it's a game changer if you do serious knowledge work. Excel, presentations, strategy, actual coding, agents, analyzing long documents. But it's not that impressive if you're just creating images, pretty front ends, ultra-fast interfaces, or doing simple tasks in bulk. GPT 5.2 proves two very important things, mainly that OpenAI isn't dead. It wasn't lack of talent, it was lack of computing power. When they've had the capacity to train, they've produced a model that competes with and outperforms Gemini and Claude in many areas. The LLM hype cycle is still going strong. More data, more computing power, better training, and we keep breaking ceilings many thought were already reached. The leap from GPT 5.1 to 5.2 in benchmarks like ARCA-G2 or GDP-Val is a clear indicator. If by late 2025 we already have models that match or exceed professionals in many tasks, understand extremely long contexts, and work with tools as nearly autonomous agents, it's logical to expect 2026 will be quite an eventful year. Meanwhile, here's what matters for you. Don't commit to just one model. Match each task with the model that solves it best. Now it's your turn. Test GPT 5.2 on a specific work task. Compare it with what 5.1 or Gemini gave you before. Decide if the improvement justifies higher cost and latency. And if you want us to keep analyzing models and their real applications, subscribe and tell me in the comments how GPT 5.2 is working for you. Has it surprised you? Has it disappointed you? Have you noticed a difference, or is it just so-so? If you're interested in learning more about AI, check the description for a link to my course and a free ebook. See you later.